Bermudian government. And so he went through high school there and had to leave to go to college.
Okay.
So they went back for their honeymoon, and they're taking their kids with us. But anyway, we cruise with these people a lot, and they're such fun, and we're like, Ron, we need to go to Bermuda so you can show us Bermuda. And so this is the Show Us Bermuda trip. We stay there for 3 days, so he's already got a plan all laid out, and it'll
That's
just
great.
it should be a lot of fun.
Very fun.
So should we start? Because the time is going to go by really fast. Lee,
Yeah.
did you set up the recording?
It's recording.
So maybe we could do this. So, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Jen first and her book, and then we'll dive into all the different questions and stuff. So I would like to introduce you all to Jennifer. How do you pronounce your last name? Dodrill? Dodrill. Okay. And her book, Birds Alive, which is book number 1 in a series of 3. Here's what the back cover copy says. Peg, widow, mom blogger, and empty nester, is desperate for a new hobby. After a late night blog post leaves her dedicated Mama Bird's followers fearful that she's closing her blog, she adopts a reader's suggestion and forms the Empty Nesters Birding Group. On their first outing overlooking beautiful Pensacola Bay, a birder dies from an allergic reaction to peanuts in the bird seed that should be peanut free. A hurricane barrels toward the Gulf Coast, and Peg's overbearing animal collecting but well-meaning mother-in-law crashes Peg's empty nest. After the hurricane passes, Peg checks on her new birder friends and finds one wounded and dying. The assailant is still there and knocks Peg down a steep staircase. Stuck in a boot with a broken foot and still reeling from the 2 murders, Peg recruits a fellow birder and her mother-in-law to help solve the crime. She even teams up with the detective investigating the case, whose dimples draw her in a way she hasn't experienced in years. So welcome to our discussion of Birds Alive. So I have a whole slew of questions, but since we introduced that, I thought I would jump right into the title question because Birds Alive, I think when I first saw that, I was like, well, what's this about? Right. And you have to read the story to understand and connect it, but it really fits. And so the question is, what is the significance of the title? And did you find it meaningful? Why or why not? So discuss. Anyone?
Well, it just added fun to it. That's silly.
Yeah.
I like that she waited till the end of the book almost to explain what that was.
Yeah.
I know some people, I was telling someone that I'm like, we had to read the whole thing to find out what that title was about. I mean, you start to see it when, you hear the bird say it, but then it was like, but I still don't know what that is. So I appreciate that kind of writing. I like it when you got some kind of odd question or something that isn't tied up until later. And I liked that, Jen.
I think what was really fun is that you presented that at the end and then presented book 2's title so that you totally get the whole thing. At that point, you feel like in the know, what's going on, all of that. So that was really cool. So, and I like it. At first it felt weird, like not weird, but just different. And then, it fits.
Yeah.
It fits.
I came up with all 3 titles before I wrote anything.
That's awesome.
Oh, I think,
but
I admire that. I've been struggling.
Titles are hard.
Title myself.
Sometimes they are. Yeah.
Envious.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just writing the book to go with the title. That's
right.
Really
yeah. And then figuring out what's the one thing that you want to communicate. Is it funny? Is it serious? Is it like, what is all that?
And as I was writing this, the part about the women's veteran license plate just came into it, and just I was like, this is perfect. I'll put bird. I was trying to figure out how many letters you can put on there. Yeah. that worked out.
And it worked. I
Mhm.
love it when it all comes together like that. It
Me
definitely,
too.
yeah, that's a fun, you know, then it's something you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to move forward with.
Right.
Okay, so starting back at a basic question
Okay.
would be, who was your favorite character and why? So Jen, we'll come to you first or last, but let's ask everybody else. Did you have a favorite character in the story?
I liked Hazel, the mother-in-law. I just
Mhm.
really liked her arc, the way she grew throughout the story. I enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
I was
Anyone
gonna
else?
say
I'd have to agree with you, Jennifer.
Yeah, Hazel. Mhm.
That was one of the other questions was let's see, who was the character that grew the most? So you guys would say that that would probably be who grew the most in that, or is there someone else?
Um, hmm. I think it would be, I
Well,
would think.
my answer is Hazel. Hazel came out of the blue, did not see her coming. She took on this life force and she became my favorite, which is kind of sad because she's not the main character, but
Oh, but
I
she added
feel
so
like,
much to the story.
and if you read the other two, well, the second one's out, the third one comes out in February, but as writing them, seeing her growth, especially her faith growth, is I loved it.
Mhm.
She's my favorite.
You know,
And
I liked
like-
how you tied in the 3 generations, that she went to help the granddaughter, you know, and then came back, that
Yeah.
she was a thread that connected
Yeah.
them. And I really liked that.
Yeah.
So here's a question, since we're talking about Hazel. What where did you get some of the mother-in-law issues? Was this from your own experiences, or is it just kind of more traditional, like, you know, what people,
Yeah.
the general consensus that people always joke about, right?
So my kids asked me if she was a combination of my stepmother and my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law lived with us twice, and the last time was the last year and a half before she passed. And um, if it was, it was unconscious. I did
Uh-huh.
not, intend going
I
that
don't
intentionally.
I don't think as writers we do that as much as people think who are non-writers, because like
Right.
when my first book came out, my sister was like, so which character is more like me? And I'm like,
Right.
that's not how that works.
No.
You kind of start with something and then
Yeah.
they just become a person.
Yeah.
Right, everyone's nodding their head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it kind of takes care of itself. So I knew that was kind of not I was a lead-in question. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but I was just more,
No.
you had such
But
great
my kids have
detail.
asked me that. So I was just like, no. I mean, she's real. To me, she's quirky.
Uh-huh.
And
But she has a reason why she is like she is,
yeah.
which is kind of interesting. And Peg has her own way of how
Right.
she views it. And the two of them have never been in sync because they hadn't spent that much time together before or needed to
No.
depend on each other.
Right.
And as soon as that changed, I think that totally. So,
Right.
okay, so we've talked about our favorite character. What is our least favorite character in the story and why? Now, it's interesting because, well, I don't know. Let's see. You left us guessing with some of the birders, which I thought was interesting. So it's kind of, we didn't have enough information. So you would kind of make an opinion before you knew enough. But I was disappointed in the detective. I was kind of rooting for him. And when you did this switcheroo, it was like, oh, but you're right. Like, it was just,
Don't give up on him. Keep reading.
okay. Oh, in the next, he's around. Okay. So that's, a series, right?
Yeah.
The two men, I had written this was a question I sent to Jen separately because was the twist before the kiss was just beautifully done, beautifully. I had myself
so I'm in
rooting.
the wrong book, remind me because I don't remember.
So I'm trying to remember because those were my notes after I read it.
Okay.
I had myself rooting for both.
Right.
And it was
yes.
And I'm trying to remember the other.
Marcus was going to kiss her and then Shorty showed up.
Yeah. And it was just that constant you played that so well. And then I had myself rooting for both of them. I didn't know yet which one I wanted to succeed. And then
Yeah.
you played that hand for the detective for being a little bit more coarse and a little bit
Yeah.
more like possessive. And
Yeah.
that was an interesting twist, I think.
Jealous.
I don't know. Does anyone else how you felt about that or
I wasn't surprised that we had a little tension there. I thought it was really a good thing, especially because that's what guys do. You know, they sort of kick dirt at each other, and you know,
ruffle the
they do
feathers?
that. But I was surprised. In my book, I had two romance interests, and we had two teams out there like rooting for it when it at the end of the first book. And I felt the same way about yours, Jen. You had it perfectly so that both of them had their positives and their negatives.
Right.
And I don't know who exactly to root for, because I liked both of them personally. I did. And I really liked the standoff stuff that they were doing. I am glad that the law enforcement guy kind of apologized. I do like that he realized he was out of line. Love that.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I've had a lot of opinions people have given me about the two of them. Matter of fact, they're probably the two characters people comment on the most.
The most. That's interesting. Isn't it interesting? Why?
And it's not a romance.
No.
No,
I love
you always got that romantic thread.
Yeah.
Peg and Hazel. That
And
was
it's
that was
interesting too,
something
because they're not needed necessarily for solving the murder. I mean, they kind of are, but
Yeah.
they're you know what I mean? Like
Right.
yeah.
I think it's like
Interesting.
a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Name Hallmark, but they always have two guys in the Hallmark movie,
Right.
and you kind of figure out which one she's going to go for. But I didn't do that in this one. I wasn't sure which one.
I wasn't sure either until I finished this third book. About 3/4 of the way writing the third book, I finally went, okay, I know which way I'm going. But I'm gonna still give another one a chance. We'll see.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's get to the murder parts.
Okay.
If you guessed who killed Sylvia, what clues did you notice that made you suspect them? Did anyone figure it out?
No. It took me a long
I
time.
don't know if I did or not because I read it twice. I read it again a couple weeks ago.
And you knew, you already had known.
I already knew, so I don't
yeah.
know if I had it figured out or not.
It was hard. You did a great job of like adding in a new thing, and we're going this direction now, and adding in a new thing this way.
That's my brain.
Yeah.
It was good. So the other question of that is, were you surprised by who the killer was?
I was.
Yeah. I was. Maybe it's because I couldn't figure it out. But I was like, oh, wait.
Who'd you think it would be instead?
I kind of thought it was the mayor more than anybody. And then when I got the clue about it being his wife, I was like, should I have seen that coming? Then I was like wanting to flip back and look at some of the clues because that really did surprise me. But you did write some clues about her in there. They were subtle, so I didn't catch. They didn't seem like obvious. So that was good. Yeah.
I have to be honest, I've never really read a cozy mystery before. So this was new for me.
God.
I know, not my thing. All I kept thinking was Murder, She Wrote, in the TV show. And is Peg like, Angela Lansbury? That's kind of where I was coming from. But it was super fun. It was just different. It was a different type so I didn't know what to expect.
It is. They are different. My mother's a librarian now. My mom is almost 89. No filter whatsoever. Okay. So when I first started writing and she found out I was going to do a cozy mystery, I felt the disdain from her. Like, because cozies used to be, the really light. And I mean, they still are because they're not gritty.
Right.
I probably have more grit. I feel like I have more grit and a little more blood in mine than probably a traditional cozy. But there are all kinds of cozies now. So
Well, that was okay. So that leads me into a question that I had was what made you want to write a death scene in a mystery?
Okay, who else on here kills people besides me? Ellen, I thought it was
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So, and so every time I think about writing a book, I want to kill somebody.
There's a couple
awesome.
characters in mine I'd like
Yeah.
to kill, but I got to keep them there to keep the story going.
Right.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
you can have a mystery and not involve a death, but
That's true.
I just think about things like, you know, the greats, the real greats, Agatha Christie and, you know, Michael Conley, and there's always a death. There's always a death, and it revolves around the loss of life. And
Yes.
Isn't that required in a cozy mystery that there's a death and it's usually on the first couple of pages?
Right. Well, yeah.
I mean, it's
Usually.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, you know, it's interesting. I did add in my second book a mystery, and I had a lot of and some suspense, and I had some fun writing it.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of a I'm like, but I was just curious to know, is this a genre that you read a lot, or is it just yes? So you're very familiar of the patterns and how things are supposed to go and those sorts of things.
My husband thinks I'm crazy, and I worry about when I go out to eat lunch with writer friends. Deb Sprinkle and Sharon Carpenter and I just had a romantic suspense novella collection come out, and we went out to eat lunch the other day, and I was sitting there going, man, I wonder what these people around us think, because we're talking about how to kill people. Like, I got so excited because in our next book, I'm not killing anyone, but Sharon is, and I'm like, I have the perfect way for you to kill someone. And I'm just thinking, these people are probably like, nobody sat near us. I did notice that.
Scared them off.
That is awesome. Very cool. Okay, so we're talking about characters. How did you come up with all the different personalities in your birding group?
That was interesting. Well, I'll tell you what, it kind of goes back to where I started the book. So my dad and his wife were in a birding group, big time birders. Like Lynn told me about that app. I don't remember what it's called. Merlin. So dad, I mean, even as my dad was in hospice laying, you know, on his deathbed, basically, we would go in there and be like, Dad, we saw this bird. It looks like blah, blah, blah. And he'd be like, that's whatever it was, you know. He was really good at that. So it was when I was with him, he had lung cancer. And when I was staying at his house is when I got this idea. So Peg's house is my dad's house. And Dad's house backed up to this protected wetlands. So we had bunnies and raccoons, and my daughter made friends with the raccoon, the whole thing, and lots and lots of birds. So that's where I drew from his birding group friends. I didn't base any of them off of them, but I used their different characteristics, I guess.
Well, I think you take an idea and then you can go, okay, let's make this even more so, and let's do, you know, and that sort of thing. So very super fun. I just,
birders are a unique group of people.
I could see that, you know, just they're different. Let's see. Because I've got questions for you, Jen, and then I have questions for the group. So let's go back. This is one of your questions here was how many here read cozy mysteries? Like that's their go-to read. Okay. So we have
read mysteries,
but
not as many cozy as
so
regular.
Then how many here are an empty nester?
I mean,
so could any of you relate to Peg and what she was going through?
Yeah.
And finding something new and different to pour into and to work on.
Yeah.
So yeah, very cool. She, in one scene, Owen tells her that when big things in her life happen, she finds a way to deal with them. Like, in other words, she finds something else to get involved in, to occupy her mind and her time. Is this healthy? How else could she process things like becoming a widow and being an empty nester? Anyone have any ideas or suggestions?
Well, what did you go out and do when you became an empty nester, or stay home and do?
I did a lot of volunteering after I
Mhm.
retired and my kids were gone and I was single again. With all the things I wanted to do and I hadn't done, so I just went down my little list and did them.
Nice.
And it occupied me, but it also got me to meet new people. And it was very fulfilling to do that, to have the freedom to do that. So
Yeah.
That's cool. Anyone else? I'm not there, so I don't. I'm like,
I mean, my kids were in high school when I started singing with the Sweet Adelines, and that, that's a tremendous hobby with all these
Mhm.
built-in women friends, and that was really a turning point for me as far as just having women friends. But then divorce and retirement kind of happened close to the same time, and that's when I went from writing short stories to I'm going to work on a real book. So because I had the time to do it and I had the quiet, I have to have quiet to do it.
I don't know if I can explain what happened when we became empty nesters, but I was a stay-at-home mom up until that point. But I always did things on the side. So I sewed for the public. I did a lot of formal wear kind of things, all that sort of thing. So I always made money. We always had, extra income. After the kids had gone, and I don't know, I just felt like I had to reinvent myself, and it took a little while.
Yeah.
I wasn't really doing very much of that anymore. And eventually what I did was I decided I got involved, a friend got me involved with the essential oils, which led to the reflexology, which I've been doing for 18 years, something like that now. And that, kind of led me to wanting to do something with writing. I've always wanted to do that anyway, and took the essential oils and developed the devotional series off of that. And it just, and there were short fictional things in there. And so that went from that to, can I do a full-length novel? So it was kind of a process over time, but it probably took me about 5 years from that, how do I reinvent myself to really finding a place in a niche.
Jen, do you still have kids at home?
Me?
Yeah.
No, mine are both in their late 30s, and I've got 6 grandkids and another one coming. But I was writing before. Yeah, I was writing before. When my kids were young, I started writing. So I was just like, oh, good, they're gone. Now I can, I can write more. And then my daughter gets married, and like a month later, she says, oh, Mom, I'm pregnant. So I went into babysitting then, and
yeah, there was some of that
right between babysitting.
for sure.
Yeah.
And they're all grown now.
Susan, did you have was it a big change for you when your kids?
No, I was already writing. I wrote some for a little local newspaper and for church magazines. So it wasn't a really big deal.
Yeah.
I had written stuff, but had shoved it away, never done much with it.
Yeah, I did the same. I would write a little and then I'd get frustrated and I'd throw it all away. Of course, this was pre-computer, unfortunately. And then just back and forth and back and forth. And then when my dad passed away, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take some time. And every time we were empty nesters a couple of times. Every time we thought we were done, somebody came back.
Somebody came home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens too.
I did have that happen to me. They were building a house. I had it for 13 months. 13 months. And one of the boys was born here. He was born at a hospital, but I mean he came home here. So yeah, we had a newborn here as well.
Wow. I
wasn't the type-
admire those of you that wrote with little ones. I did not do that.
Oh,
Me neither. I didn't start writing until everybody was gone. And like Ellen, I'm like Ellen. I needed the quiet. Everybody needed to be done. And then I started with short stories. So it was kind of like an ease into the writing.
Yeah.
So it sounds similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one reason. I'm sorry, Denise. That's one
No,
reason
no, you're fine.
I made Peg an empty nester was I was finally a real empty nester.
yeah.
And I was like, I know there are other people that understand,
Yes.
other women that understand this. I now, for some reason, I made her a widow, and I think it was because, like you guys said, it's easier not to have that. I'm not a widow, but it's easier to write when my husband's not home. But
People are looking for books with
Yeah.
those kind of tropes.
yeah, I want
I don't want everybody to be young and beautiful.
20s and bright. Yeah, let's have some sagginess here, okay?
Yes.
Well, okay, so talking about characters further, were there any plot twists that you loved or hated? So this is to the whole group.
Yeah.
Feel
free to criticize. I'm okay with that.
I don't think there's really, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I don't think there's much to criticize there. It's just more like, ooh, like I have a question for you, Jen. So while you guys are thinking about what you loved in the plot twist or not, are you a swimmer? Because your details with the swimming were pretty spot on. I grew up swimming, so that's why I was like, oh, okay.
I think I started a swim team when I was 6. I was just in the summers, and then in high school I was on a swim team.
And swim team, I did too. And I loved that the line of like my favorite lane was open. You know what I mean? Like it's a whole thing. Like, and so only a swimmer would know that. And so that was one of my questions. So then what other things in the book were personal experiences that you kind of poured in?
Well, like I said, I used my dad's house, and then that neighborhood. Trying to think. This is the book that they went to Barrancas, and Barrancas is on the naval station. So my dad was in the Navy. My grandfather was in the Navy. Both my grandfathers were in the Navy. My husband was in the Navy. And so I grew up in Gulf Breeze right outside of Pensacola. So the Pensacola Naval Station was part of my life. And Dad's buried at Barrancas. And they have a great fort out there, Fort Barrancas, which is kind of opposite Fort Pickens, which I use Fort Pickens in the next book, and probably one of my very favorite places. And so that was fun to go to Barrancas in the book and go on a birding trip. Oh, I got a puppy. He's looking at you like,
what are you doing?
Yeah.
So do you have a bird in your family? Like okay.
No, and I am not a birder. Now, my cat, Max, who's not in here, I'd show you. He is a birder. So outside our front window, there's like a garden area. So I bought him a bird feeder, 2 bird feeders, a bird feeder and then a suet feeder. And then there's a little electric stove right in front of the window. So he actually sits on it, right? It's not a stove, it's a little electric fireplace.
Heater?
He sits on it, yeah, and he watches the birds. And so I know what a cardinal is.
They make a lot of noise too.
They do. And I do know pelicans and seagulls.
So if you're not a birder, that was my question. What made you use that as the premise for the plot? Like what?
My dad.
The whole, like,
Because it
just
was
something to honor him.
Yes.
Personal. Okay. I missed that. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, Dad and his wife were very big into birding, and actually that's how he met her, I think. So yeah.
So there was one of those little birder romance.
Okay, so you had some of the other things you had, the dog getting sick in the car. Have you ever experienced that?
Yes, we had that. we adopted our dog from the Collierville Animal Shelter, and we got about 30 minutes home. Right, I mean, we were probably 10 minutes up the road, and that all of a sudden that dog.
Wow.
Oh gosh.
So you used that experience.
I
Have
did.
you ever had? have you ever had a foot in a boot?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yes, I
Yeah.
have.
I love the little things, that you just kind of
Yeah.
you pull from those experiences and the
Yeah.
emotions that come with those experiences, and you
Right.
did a great job of putting those in. Um, let's see. Okay, so that's all that. So let's go back. Okay, plot points. Anyone? Did you guys think about things? What were things that you loved and things that you hated? I think what was interesting is I didn't expect a second murder.
Yeah.
And I was very curious in the beginning, the whole peanut thing, because we didn't know anything about Anna, or what Anna. And it was like, was that targeted towards her? You kind of dropped a few hints, but it wasn't her house. It wasn't. So, but what was her background? What, was somebody. So you did a great job of kind of waiting and letting that fester a bit to kind of figure out.
Yeah. Do you know how hard it is to find birdseed that doesn't have peanuts in it?
Really?
Very hard.
I'll have it.
Very
I
hard.
had no idea.
And when I do a book signing, I always do little baggies of bird seeds, right? And
do.
or I have a thing where kids can make their own. But I finally bought, my granddaughters both had peanut allergies when they were little. They outgrew them, thank God. But you can buy bird seed. It's expensive, but you can buy bird seed that is peanut free, like across the line. There's no interactions with other nuts, nothing like that.
So did
And
you
so
use that at the book signings?
I do. Mhm.
You used the peanut free.
Yes.
Okay, I wondered about that. I mean, I remember seeing them when we were at the library that you
Yep.
had them.
Yep, because we knew we were very involved in the allergy family at that point, the local one, and I knew a little boy who had severe peanut allergies. Like
My brother-in-law does.
if I touched it and then I touched something and he touched it, he would have,
A reaction.
Yeah.
That's hard.
His brother has horrible reactions.
Right. So I'm pretty careful with that.
So it was realistic what you could do with that.
It was.
Something as
Yeah.
simple as that. We don't think about those things, but
No.
that is something that's definitely.
And I had to check on the EpiPen stuff because technically they could have given her the EpiPen when they got it, even though at that point she didn't have a pulse and she might have lived. I just didn't write that in there. I didn't write it that way. Technically, she might have lived.
So does your search bar have all this type of stuff in it because you're trying to understand the details?
And like I said, I have some personal experience. My oldest daughter, my granddaughter's mother, my oldest daughter, has terrible allergy problems and has had to epi a number of times. So a lot of that I knew. And then I checked with some friends on some of it to make sure. Yeah.
I keep keeping an eye on the time here. Does anyone there were two questions asked in the Facebook group thing. One was, what is your character development like? Which we kind of talked about your personalities, but is there something more that you do for your character development? When you're like, oh, I need to add another person in here, or just kind of
question. Who asked that question? Which one of y'all asked that question? Was it you?
I think it was Tammy.
Oh, I think that was true. It was Tammy.
Oh, okay.
It was Tammy.
So that cracked me up because I have seen people. How many of y'all do the little charts for your characters? Like interview them and all. Okay.
I try to, but it's more after the fact. I've already kind of put them in and I need more information on them.
Yeah.
So Anna character develops, I can fill that chart in.
Anna was easy to kill off because I never got any background on Anna. I mean, she never came to me. So I was like, I'll just kill her off,
That's a poor victim.
It was easy. Sorry. I do not do that. Yeah.
That's funny. And then the other question was, what is your writing process, your schedule? Do you have one?
Writing process, I am definitely a pantser. I've tried to plot. It doesn't work for me. I know people that it works really well. How many of y'all are plotters? None of y'all. Denise, are you a plotter? She's not shaking her head, no. Okay.
You're in good
I'm
No,
company.
I mean,
water.
I do a little bit more brainstorming and I
Mhm.
have ideas of potential, but I let the story and the characters kind of write where they're going, but it gives
Right.
me enough to be like, okay, this is where I'm
Right.
headed.
Yeah.
I
So,
think.
so that's one thing I do is I use the Save the Cat
I mean, you,
beat sheet. And I started that with Birds Alive with the Save the Cat beat sheet. I sort of go back and make sure that I'm hitting those points at
Mhm,
about the
mhm.
right point. And it's helped me to understand something that as readers, we instinctively know, but we don't think about it that way.
Yeah.
If you're reading a book, and like Lynn said, if you're reading a murder mystery and somebody doesn't die in the first few pages, you're kind of like, you feel, do I want to keep reading? Right? If they don't hit those points along the way, you lose interest.
Mhm.
Watching a movie, reading a book, whatever, watching a TV show. And when I started to realize how true that was, watching TV shows and going, yeah, no, we don't give them much time anymore. If you don't snag us quickly, I'm not watching it, I'm not reading it. There are too many books in the world to read. If you don't grab my attention, I'm not reading it.
Yeah,
Keep
I mean,
paying
and
attention.
it's not
Yeah.
necessarily that they have to die, but
Right.
you have to know that they're going to.
Right. Yeah. Well, whatever the
They're
expected
doomed. They're
trope
doomed.
or genre is, then you want to hit those points.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
And so I use Save the Cat. I'm not like religious about it, but I do have two different templates, one for a 65,000 word book and one for 85. So that I can, and then I did one for the novella. So that I can kind of have an idea, oh, something big needs to happen here. This is a big turning point. I have to,
Mhm.
tie things up or whatever. So
So you mentioned, you have the second book came out recently.
yes, February.
And you mentioned, so are we seeing all the same characters? Is it kind of, a
Except for
continuation?
the ones that died.
Yeah, well, yeah, got that. So we
They're
kind of
not
get to
coming back to
revisit,
life. No reincarnation here.
No
and there's
reincarnations, no,
with
not
a
in
new death, and then a new
Right.
case to solve,
right.
and all of that.
So
Very
as
cool.
you know, from the end of Birds Alive, there are Quetzals missing. So
Quetzals, is that how you pronounce that?
Quetzal, yeah.
Quetzal. I was going to say
Quetzal
Quetzal.
Quetzal or Quetzal. Yeah.
Quetzal. Okay.
So they're missing, and the bad guy, Estelle, she was the bad guy. That has the Birds Alive license plate. She's still there. They had never caught her.
Yeah.
So I think they have to find the Quetzals. Yeah, so it's everybody, and then I think there's a new guy that comes in and wears the Quetzal, and he's not love interest, but he's
He joins the birders then.
he's a lot of fun. He's
Okay.
he's an interesting person, yeah.
Yeah, I guess if you kill someone off, you kind of have to introduce another one, like to kind of keep the grouping and dialogue. Yeah, very cool. That's exciting.
Keeps things
And
interesting in book 2, Jen.
Huh?
I said he keeps things interesting in book 2.
Yeah.
very cool. Who's read the second book then? If we've read the first, so okay, it's on my it's on my to be read list. But as a writer, I'm finding I don't read as much as I used to.
Today, I would say no. I need to go back and read it again because I read it way back.
So
I think we read it before it came out, didn't I?
Probably my favorite book 2, but I like book 3 also. I like the ending of book 3. I'm really excited about book 3.
That's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Will there be a book 4?
No.
Okay. I just wondered if you were ending the series there.
Well, when I first got the contract, it was for the 3 books. I could maybe see a little spinoff with Hazel. We'll see.
Yeah. Maybe a little novella with Hazel.
Does anyone have any other questions? I mean, I have more to ask, but I'm like, I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask something. Anyone?
Did you take
I had
classes on
asked,
how to write mysteries?
I had
What was that?
Did I take a class on how to write a mystery? No. I read a lot. Well, I read a lot. But I did look at a number of ways that you need to do a cozy, where you need to hit, besides save the cat. There are a number of different things out there that you can find to how to plot it and where things need to happen and that kind of stuff. I think in some cases, mine might not be a traditional cozy because Pensacola's, usually they use like a small town. So if I use like Gulf Breeze, where I was raised, small, closer knit kind of thing. So what I did, since I used Pensacola, is I just kind of used her area where she was, which is kind of northeast Pensacola, which is the part I'm more familiar with, because that's where
Sure.
my dad lived and my mom still lives in that area.
Ellen, you have a question?
I had posted on Facebook about your character development. I was just curious as to whether you do an outline. Does it just come to you? Do you do a letter from your character? That's what I was curious about. Some people do that.
Yeah, I know some people do very detailed character development before they even start writing. I think I went into it a little bit backwards. I think, I started it and I put it in a contest with Scrivenings Press, and I won first place in mystery, and I had not finished the book. It was just like the novel start contest. Yeah.
Yep, that was my.
So,
I was first place in the mystery in novel starts, but I didn't win the overall.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, same. So
didn't have a book.
I finished the book. I sent it to Linda at Scrivenings Press, and she said, "Don't talk to anybody else. I'm going to call you." And I was like, "Okay." So that was really exciting. But I do think that I went into writing backwards from what some people do.
I don't think there is a backwards way. I think it's just
say that because it's darling.
It's different.
I was just curious because some people have this specific developing characters, and I just thought they were so cute, especially Hazel. And I'm one of those that sort of just meanders into a character as well.
Right.
They just sort of speak to me. And
I almost feel like I know Hazel better than Peg, and Peg is the main character. Hazel definitely came alive for me.
But
Hazel and Shorty.
I really related to Peg because she has to deal with these characters. Sometimes you're the one that's trying to keep everybody happy.
Yes.
And you're trying not to react to this personality and that personality. And I mean, I really could relate to Peg, and then her, her best friend saying, "I want to take over the
blog
website blog." Yeah, I thought, wow, I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
And I thought, that is a part of her. That I thought that was a really great whatever
because she that supported her and her kids after her husband died.
Right.
Yeah.
And back in the day, y'all remember when the mommy blogs were a big thing.
They were.
And some of them still are, but at one point they were pretty good money makers for the people that had the big ones. And so that's kind of what I based that on.
It's interesting because I had a note here, the honesty of Peg, because you were in her head. Of how she sees things, but she struggled too, but yet she had to keep it. She just had to keep going, because a lot of times that's what happens, right? Life happens, and we have to keep going because of like what Ellen says. But her innocence and through that kind of shined through, and I was like, how are you able to do that? It just was done well.
Thank you.
Yeah. You said that. Do you feel like as you define Peg in more of the book, do you feel like she's the same I don't want to give away the things from the other books, but you know what I mean? Like,
Does she stay the same?
no, she's not that, but just, you said you had a hard time connecting to her. Did that change as you were writing the next?
Well, it's funny, as Ellen was talking just now, I was like, yeah, I guess maybe one reason is that's kind of me. You know, I said, I have 5 kids. I have a big family. I have a lot of people that I checking up on and keeping track of. And this is a confession. I never think of myself as a strong personality. You know what I mean? I think I'm a strong person, but I mean, like, I don't, I don't think of myself as somebody you want to write a book about.
But at the same time, if you, like with Peg, she had concern for somebody,
right,
and was determined to do whatever it took to do that person right.
Right.
And that is her inner strength. That even though she annoyed the detective and she annoyed the, she wasn't going to let that person, she wasn't going to fail them, and I think that is something as women and moms we carry with us a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's more to her than you think, which is pretty cool. So anyone else have any other observances? I feel like that went deeper than we were expecting. So thank you, Ellen, for saying something, because I think that
I had a question. So this always interests me because I did and it's in the group. I think next week I show the pictures. Who would y'all think of if you cast any of these characters like in a movie? Who would come to mind?
That's always a hard question for me.
Isn't it? It's hard.
I'm not very good at that.
So I had some pictures from Pinterest that I'm very visual. I have, like, that's why I had to use my dad's house. It has to be somewhere I've seen for me to figure out where everything is in relation to things. So I took these pictures, like what I thought Peg looked like, and Hazel and Shorty, and then I ran them through Canva. I think this was a few months ago, before Where's the Kettle came out. I ran them through Canva, and they have what they call a Paintify app if you have Canva Pro. Well, unfortunately, when you run it through that, it ages them by like 40 years. So like Peg looked like she was 80, and I'm like, well, that's not going to work. So I ended up with this cute little redhead, that Peg is, but maybe a little younger. Hazel looked more like what I thought Hazel would. When I got to Marcus, the guy I had for Marcus, I mean, he was, in my opinion, he was a good looking guy. I ran him through that, and I swear he looked like he had to be 90. Okay. It was like wrinkles and well, I mean, I think I'm older. I think older men are attractive, but that was a little beyond what I was looking for. I ended up I ran George Clooney through Canvas Paintify to come up with Marcus's picture, just to get an age where he, like the neck, all the, was just crazy. So he does look a lot like George Clooney on my website, but Shorty was a little easier, but that was fun. It was fun. I don't know if y'all have ever done that, but it's a lot of fun just to.
I know. I'm listening to. They appreciate your process, because now I'm like, oh, that's how they're doing that. Yeah. Okay, I'll go play with that.
So, and especially on Pinterest, if you go on Pinterest and just kind of look for people or pictures that look, even if they're, I think Lori, the neighbor, ended up being. Y'all remember Andy McDowell? With the wall?
Yeah.
Okay, that's who she ended up looking like in my Paintify thing, but that is very helpful for me, because then I can think about what their physique is like. You know what I mean? Like how they present themselves and those kind of things. I just need to see that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We are down to kind of our last 6 minutes. Is there any other questions or anything, Jen, that you want to share about this story? How has it been received? What have you gotten emails related to the book? What's some things that have come up because of it? Like when you're at book signings, do people, what do they say? And
once you have the second book out, it's easier to sell the first one.
Yeah, I experienced that too in May last month.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, wow, the lift that comes just by
Right.
having the second one. I was,
Right.
yeah.
So I do have a question for you guys. Was the setting clear? Could you tell where they were in Florida, and did that kind of come through?
I tend to, I like to have vagueness in my brain
Right.
and just see the story unfold. I'm not a very, when there's a lot of pages and pages and pages
Right.
of like detailed setting, that kind of is hard for me. But some people love that. So
Right.
yeah,
I'm
I
that way
felt
about my characters. I don't want to
I
know
felt
a
it was
whole lot
enough.
about my characters. I kind of think of what they look like myself,
Yeah.
I don't have to know all the details. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh,
And
sorry. Dogs.
yeah.
If I sit here, they think I need to let them in and out at their will.
You do. That's why you exist.
That's right.
Mhm.
I am their
Well, this is
servant.
it's been super fun to ask you questions, ask
Yeah,
everyone, and
thanks,
talk about the
Denise.
story and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Yes, Lynn.
Before we all get off of here, since mine is next month, I have a question for all of you as you are reading through it. I'm really struggling. I found a lot of good keywords for frayed promises, but I'm having a really tough time with keywords for tangled promises that aren't like
For people to
used over
search and
over
find.
the description things. And so if anybody thinks of something as you're reading through it, I'd love to know.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I was going to introduce that it was you and your next book for the next month. So,
Sorry, I
as
jumped the
Lynn
gun on
said, no, that's totally fine. As Lynn says, that's our July book, Tangled Promises. Has anyone read that yet? I have, but has anyone? Yeah. So that's will be a newbie for some people.
I bought it though.
Yeah. So, and that date is July 17th, I think.
I have the
17th, I think.
Yep, July
When is it?
17th.
July 17th? Okay. I put it in my newsletter because what I had to learn to figure out how to do was because mine goes out in the middle of the month. So I do a sneak peek for the next month,
Right.
and then republish so everyone gets it twice. That's what I've been doing.
That's a good
to kind of
idea.
help.
Yeah.
That's what happened
And-
with Jen's this time. It went out today as, join us
Mhm.
on the book club tonight, but it was out a couple weeks ago. We did it with a giveaway, a signed
Right.
author copy giveaway.
Are we able to see if people are watching the recording? Are we able to track that or not? Or
No.
is that helping?
I'm able to go in and look, and I know Susan's had some, and I haven't looked since then to see. But
Okay. So the
yeah.
recordings are good. This is great. It's really fun to get to know you guys more and to talk about our books and all of that. But it's great then that it's there for others if they want to see parts of it or whatever. So that's really awesome. So thank you for joining us and rewatching the video if you're watching this right now. And come join us next month.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Thanks, Denise. I appreciate you.
I'm sorry, Lynn. I won't be here, but I will write a review.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
That's the
Reviews are
other
good.
thing, if for all of us to
yeah,
remember when we read those books to write those reviews.
Write
It's-
reviews.
I have some catching up to do, but yes, I will be doing that.
I think I've done that for all of them we've
My
done. so
Kindle off of airplane mode because it always downloads all the stuff and then says, do you want to write them? Want to write the reviews? Yes, I do, but I can't do it this very second. So
Right.
I try to turn that off when I have time to write them. And
So my issue is Kindle will go immediately to wanting to ask me what my stars are,
Yes.
but it won't allow me in my old Kindle Paperwhite to write
Oh.
the review. It only asks
Oh.
no,
for the star.
it won't let me in my Oasis.